Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Cristina Mislan. She's an assistant professor of journalism studies at the Missouri School of Journalism. Hi, Cristina.
Hello, Sonali.
Well, just a day after U.S. officials and Kurdish rebels declared a major victory against the Islamic State group in Kobani, Syria, reports have emerged of a major attack by ISIS in the northern Iraqi city of Kirkuk against the local Kurdish population. Separately, a series of bombings killed nearly 24 people in Samarra and Baghdad as well. In Egypt, the first major attack by a group aligning itself with ISIS also took place. A number of simultaneous bombings left 26 people dead in the Sinai. The New York Times called it, quote, the most complicated and widely coordinated terrorist attack in Egypt in years. A group calling itself the Sinai Province of the Islamic State took credit for those attacks. And Jordan's negotiations with ISIS over a prisoner swap have come to a standstill, leaving the family of a Jordanian captured pilot on tenterhooks. ISIS demanded that Jordan deliver an al-Qaeda female prisoner named Sajida al-Rishawi to the Turkish border last night before it would release the pilot. His fate and that of a Japanese journalist being held with him remains unknown. Well, Cristina, has ISIS seemingly upped the ante? It seems to be sprouting chapters all over the Arab world.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is definitely a somewhat rapid expansion of ISIS, but, what can we expect when we've also seen an expansion of Europe and the U.S. in the region as well, albeit at different times. But I will say this, I saw a story in The Guardian this morning about women fighting for their community in a Syrian town, defending themselves from, and their family and community members from ISIS. And I thought, here's a story in which the U.S. Doesn't have to be involved, right? It's a story about people fighting for themselves. And so I think while we're seeing and this is important because while we're seeing this kind of expansion of ISIS, I think it's also important to understand that that's not representative of the Arab world at all. And you have people like these women that's profiled in the story in The Guardian.
And here in the United States, Texas has executed yet another man, the second in the U.S. this week to die at the hands of the state. A 57-year-old African-American man named Robert Ladd was killed by lethal injection after the Supreme Court denied an appeal on the grounds of mental disability. Ladd was convicted of the brutal murder of a woman in 1996. Earlier this week, Georgia killed another African-American man named Warren Hill, whose attorneys made a strong case for a stay based on intellectual disability that the court also denied. Both men were killed by lethal injection. The court 2 days ago did stay the executions of 3 prisoners in Oklahoma, 2 white and 1 black, in response to a legal challenge of the cruelty and pain caused by at least one chemical used in that state's lethal injection cocktail. Arguments in their case will be heard by justices in April. Cristina, it seems as though the application of capital punishment in the U.S. is extremely uneven, and we're still trying to find humane ways to commit a barbaric act, if that's even possible. What do you think?
Yeah, I think capital punishment is not humane at all. And so anytime you have human beings making decisions about who gets to be executed or who doesn't, that's, there's so many questions to raise. And so I usually think everything is complicated, but to me, the solution here is simple. We have to humanely punish people for committing capital murder. Well, the answer is not capital punishment, and we have to end. So the solution is to get rid of capital punishment, period. And I think another reason to end capital punishment is, of course, the issue with all the people who have recently been pardoned when evidence has suggested and shown and proven that they're actually innocent. And so that's also a really big problem as well.
And finally, President Obama revealed the main thrusts of his 2016 budget proposal yesterday. In an op-ed in the New York Times, Vice President Joe Biden expanded on one major aspect of that proposal: aid to Central American countries. In response to the brief influx of child migrants arriving in the U.S. from countries like Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador last summer, the Obama administration plans to ask Congress to set aside $1 billion in aid, tripling the amount usually offered to the region. Biden wrote that the aid would, quote, help Central America's leaders make the difficult reforms and investments required to address the region's interlocking security, governance, and economic challenges. Strangely, he cited the U.S.-funded Plan Colombia as a model. Colombia has struggled for years with a right-wing U.S.-backed government funding paramilitaries that are as vicious as the rebels that they fought. Cristina, while Central American countries do need aid, is what the U.S. is offering really going to help?
No, the short answer is no. I think that U.S. aid, another form of its soft power, has never helped any Latin American countries in the long term. That's economically, politically, socially, and so this definitely isn't the answer. But what I do think might be a start to actually talking about the real solutions might actually be maybe ending CAFTA, right? Free trade agreements like CAFTA, also the so-called war on drugs that continues to happen between not just with the U.S. government, but also between the U.S. government and Latin American governments. And so those are two things I think if Obama and Biden propose those as two solutions to start, I think we would start having a real conversation about what actually might help the Central American, the people living in Central America.
And we'll examine President Obama's budget in greater depth near the end of our program. Cristina, thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you.
Cristina Mislan is our daily Newsflash guest expert on Fridays. She is an assistant professor of journalism studies at the Missouri School of Journalism. This is Uprising. We'll be right back.